into another week of Eye of the Storm, a Guelph Storm podcast with myself, Ryan Drury, the voice of the Guelph Storm on Rogers TV. And we continue to kind of comb through some of the new faces in the Royal City on season 2 here as we head into another great season of Guelph Storm hockey. Very pleased to welcome on new associate coach and longtime NHLer, Rob Davison. Rob, how are you, my friend?
Good, settling into the workflow of the Guelph Storm, and just happy to be here.
You know, you've had, as I mentioned, a long pro career. You're, of course, familiar with this league, having been a player in it, of course, back in the old North Bay Centennial days, most notably. And that went on to a long NHL career, and that transitioned into coaching for you. And you're still a pretty young guy, but you've already had a lot of great experience in this new stage of your hockey life. When did you kind of know, when you were playing maybe, or maybe soon after, that coaching was something that was enticing to you?
I didn't actually. I had my playing career in junior hockey. That's true. It has changed a lot since then. I would say in my last couple of years of professional hockey, I started to think, what's next? And obviously, I was as part of the PHPA. That's the AHL the Players Association. And they offer a firefighting North American certification for firefighting. So I went down that path, and I'm officially a North American firefighter. I'm certified. I could apply to any city and hopefully get on that staff. But my wife just felt that I had too much of a competitive nature to kind of just walk away from hockey totally. And she said, is it something you'd be interested in? And at the time, I always enjoyed, especially as an older player, kind of like mentoring the younger players in that sort of like leadership role. But it hadn't been something I'd given a lot of thought to. So I took a moment and I finished the training, wrote my exams, and then an opportunity in Europe arose, and I kind of was like, okay, let's try this for a year. A year turned into 2. A year that turned into a year in Russia, which then turned into kind of coming back to North America and with the Toronto Marlies. And at that point, I did take some time away for personal reasons. My family and my son was getting older, who's now at the U of G. So I wanted to get back into it after that kind of 3-year break. And again, this opportunity came up, and I'm glad to be here.
You know, you talk about that European experience that you have, and it's a pretty different game. You know, guys definitely key in on that and talk about that a lot. Obviously, the ice is bigger, and Russia in particular, they have a very unique, I would call it, hockey culture. Tell us a little bit about your experience over there. I believe you were with Dynamo Minsk, and it was, probably a bit of a culture shock, not only, socially, but probably on the ice as well. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, the biggest thing for anyone who goes over to Europe or Russia, embrace their culture and they'll embrace you. And if you go over there and you try to change things, try to change the way they've lived their lives or their approach to hockey, it's not going to work. You're going to get a lot further kind of embracing their culture, understanding where their values are. And I was in Austria for 2 years, but I played there for 2 years prior to that. And so I had a good understanding of that. Now, Russia was a different story. I had never been there. I'd never played there. I played with some Russian players, but again, you're in the North American kind of bubble and you don't really understand where they're coming from. Well, I did after kind of going in there with an open mindset. And the biggest thing for me was the lifestyle change, and in particular, the travel schedule and the work grind of the KHL. We would play games that were, a 9-hour time change and a 13-hour flight. So that was the biggest adjustment, kind of understanding how much the players could, how much information they could take in, how fatigue set in. So that was my experience. The culture there, again, I've never gone somewhere where I didn't enjoy the culture, because there's always something to learn from someone, someone an area you're not comfortable with. And when I say not comfortable with, it's just not knowing. But once you embrace it, once you get into that culture, once you understand where they're coming from and the way they approach their lives, you're going to learn a lot from them. And I have a lot of good memories from both experiences.
Well, it's good to hear. And yeah, I mean, it's just such a different culture, not only on the ice, but off. And it would be such an experience for anybody. And, after that, you mentioned you come back and you transition, obviously, to coaching in the AHL, which culminated in a pretty fun year for you and the rest of the Toronto Marlies in 2017-18. Tell us a bit about that season and what it was like to experience a championship run like that, because you guys had a really great group.
We did. We had a lot of really great veterans. Colin Greeny, Vincent Laverty. These are guys. They went the college route, but the biggest adjustment coming home was, and we were very successful. It was a very successful season with the Calder Cup, the championship. But the biggest thing, the adjustment as far as the coaching and my perspective on it, was how it shifted to development, because the American League is very much about development and how you're going to get those younger players up to the NHL level. So that was the biggest kind of the difference between coaching in Europe, coaching in Russia, and then coming back to North America, that it wasn't just win now, win all the time, win at all costs. It was about the development. So we were blessed with an older core group that had a very good understanding of what it would take to be successful, and they helped us along the way as well.
I want to talk to you a little bit now, in terms of the OHL. Obviously, I mentioned your experience having played in the league. You know a lot about it. You mentioned earlier that it has changed a lot, and it certainly has. What do you remember about your experience playing in the league and how critical it was to your development and ultimately sending you on to a great playing career at the highest level?
It played a big factor because of it gets you. I was, I guess with junior hockey, I was lucky because I had already physically developed and was a larger player. So I didn't need the time that perhaps the NCAA route, the college route, where you spend more time in the gym. The biggest benefit for me was learning how to play a pro schedule, and understanding how to balance, work and life, with the school, and then also the expectation to perform on the ice as well. And playing, I think it was 66 games. I think it's 68 now, but it's a big workload, and understanding coming to practice every day, and then also having to play the games and the travel in North Bay. There was a little bit more travel than I think there will be in Guelph. But it was a big learning experience. My 3 years there, that was my biggest takeaway, was understanding how to kind of balance life.
Well, you talk about travel and a culture shock. I mean, you're a 4th-round pick of the San Jose Sharks. And I'm sure for a kid who was born in the St. Catharines area, all of a sudden you find yourself beachside as a pro hockey player. What was that transition like?
Well, it took a couple years to get there, but my first year was in Cleveland, and then I spent 2 years my first year was in Kentucky, and then 2 years in Cleveland. But when I did finally get there, the NHL is a dream. Like you have all the resources, the travel, the chartered planes, the hotels you stay in. But with that, all those, great things, there's pressure, there's expectations, and there's always, someone's coming up, some younger players coming up that would like your position. I mean, there's only so many to go around. So, the NHL, it's the best league in the world. And when they say the best players play there, it's a fact, and it's because they're constantly pushing themselves to get better. And that's the biggest thing about the NHL, is that there's pressure, and you have to understand how to manage that pressure and then perform at the highest level.
Fans would also recognize you from your time with the Islanders, of course, the Canucks and the Devils in the NHL. And I wonder, very different cities, different conferences that you got to play in. So you got to experience a lot of different NHLers, on a consistent basis. And I wonder, defensively, who was maybe, one of the toughest guys that you ever had to defend in terms of shutting them down offensively? Because you played in an era where there were, a couple pretty good players that you had to shut down.
Uh, in open ice, Sidney Crosby, 100%. And in the corners, I'm going to age myself a bit here, but Peter Forsberg. It was unbelievable in the corners, and it was very, very difficult to get the puck off him. Never did, but I contained him at times. So, yeah, those would be the two guys that gave me the biggest. George Larocque's up there too, but for very different reasons.
Yes, for sure. George presented a very different challenge. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring up Peter Forsberg because, our friend Lisa with the Storm, we were educating her a little bit about Peter Forsberg the other day. See, Lisa, Peter was a good player. He was a pretty darn good player. He just got hurt with a lot of unfortunate injuries. I wonder too, before we talk a little bit about, your coaching career and your philosophy and what you have in store here for the Guelph Storm. If memory serves, you were part of one of the strangest goals in NHL history against a former teammate, Vesa Toskala. I was in the building that night. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I was actually in attendance and saw the puck come all the way down. I believe it's still the longest goal with a goaltender in the net in NHL history. It's about 196 feet. You're killing a penalty with the New York Islanders. You're in town playing the Leafs. Take us through what you remember about what's now famously known as the Toskala goal.
Well, if I remember the play correctly and I remember the sequence of events, I think I rimmed the puck to try to get out the first time and it didn't get out. So the next time it came to me, I was just putting it up the middle of the ice. I mean, obviously to put it on net was lucky. But we'd been killing the penalty we'd been out there for a while. I remember being tired, and I just remember the second time I got a chance to exit the puck, it was going all the way down the ice, and it just went up the middle of the ice. And poor Vesa.
I know the poor guy. And if you're not familiar with this, you can look it up. It's a very famous NHL blunder, if you will. I felt just terrible for the guy because the way the puck bounced, it looked like a knuckleball coming in on him. The poor guy. But I mean, hey, your name's up there with one of the strangest plays in league history. So, I mean, that's got to be something that you probably showed your kids a couple times.
My kids, I don't know if I've ever showed it to them, but they've definitely showed it to me.
Right.
And I've had players now over the course of the years have come up and like, are you that guy who scored from 200 feet away? I'm like, yeah, that was me. Yeah. It's claim to fame.
There's worse things to be known for, Rob. That's 100%. For sure.
No doubt.
Yeah, a very strange play. I'll never forget that. And I'm sure, on that note, you won't forget a lot of the lessons that you learned from coaches throughout your career. And like I said, stops in San Jose, the Island, the Devils and the Canucks. Like, you played for a lot of great NHL coaches and coaches throughout your career. Who are some that really stick out that you maybe took some lessons from and incorporate into the way you coach now?
I think Ron Wilson. He was my first coach in the NHL and the guy I had the longest in San Jose. And I think understanding that you have to manage players' personalities, and everyone's not the same. So everyone's not going to react well to being yelled at or have an aggressive approach, and others need a harder voice at times. But the biggest thing for players now is there's so much information out there. They want to understand the why, the how, the when, and you have to have the knowledge to explain it to them. Players are different now than they used to be, and for me, they're not robots. And my approach to coaching is understanding that they're not, and going from A to B has many different paths, and for each player it's going to be different depending on their style of play.
I wonder as well, you obviously would have had an opportunity to play with a lot of skilled teammates over the years. Who are some guys that really stick out, some of your favorite teammates that you got to share a locker room with? Because that's such a big part of being a pro player, is that locker room and being in there with the guys. Who are some of your favorites over the years?
Jumbo Joe Thornton, just the best teammate, best personality. There's a saying out there, you never say no to Joe, because he would never say no to you. So honestly, like best teammate I've ever had. Nothing but great things, nothing but great experiences with him. And then I have, Vesa was a very long time teammate of mine. And even before he was in Toronto and being in San Jose, and then we spent years together in the minor leagues, coming up together. I met up with him a few years back now when I was over in Finland. I've kept in touch with a number of players over the course of my post hockey career, post playing career. But Jumbo is definitely. I went back to Patrick Marleau, played in his retirement jersey. I was down in San Jose, flew down for that. So it's a very tight. Hockey's a very tight knit community. But Jumbo definitely stands out above the rest.
Yeah, and that's what you hear about the guy. Like, he's so popular. He's a Hall of Famer for sure too. I mean, one of the best players, one of the best playmakers in NHL history. I'm curious, on that note, making plays and trying to coach kids and have success and get some wins in the OHL. What would you say is your coaching style in terms of, engaging with players, what you want to teach them? Special teams are going to be a big part of your role, which is always, a big challenge. What would you say is kind of your coaching philosophy? What are you going to bring to the Storm this year?
Just teaching players to understand why we're asking them to do certain things, when we're asking them to do certain things. I don't want them. There's going to be no future in hockey for them if they don't understand. Like I said before, the why, the when, the how. If we put them on the ice and we tell them do this and they just do that and they never understand why they're doing that. When they get to the next level and they need to make an adjustment, they won't know how. And that's my coaching philosophy, is just to kind of grow their knowledge of the game and improve their hockey IQ, and just have them, reach their potential. And in my mind, my approach is they can only do that through, hockey knowledge and, improving how they think the game.
Obviously, you're going to be part of Corey Stillman's staff. He was our first guest in this second season, a guy that very well, played against in the NHL and has lots of coaching experience himself. What about this Guelph Storm opportunity was very intriguing to you? Why the Royal City? Why did it stick out?
Two reasons. One, Corey has a great playing career, and he's also has an excellent coaching past as well. And there's lots to learn. He's been in the NHL. One day I'd like to coach in the NHL, so I have lots to learn from him. And also personally with my son at U of G, it's close. I can see him on a regular basis. Like I said before, it was the reason I took time away from coaching hockey, was because he was finishing up his high school, and with the life of hockey and bouncing around Europe, Russia, it was an opportunity for me to kind of build up my relationship before he moved out of the house. So those are the two biggest factors for me. And the history of the Guelph Storm, it's always been a first-class organization. So tying myself to that and understanding that every day is going to be a work day, and having high expectations for myself, but understanding that the organization will also meet those expectations for me.
Well, it's great too on a personal level that you have your lad right there at U of G. We're looking forward to having the Davison family out at some Storm games, of course. And a couple fun ones here for you. We talk about music a lot because I know that music's a big part of the locker room culture. It doesn't matter what level you're at, even the kids, they got the boom boxes going in there. I wonder, what was like the big popular music when you were playing, and what would you kind of consider yourself a fan of now?
I'm open to all kinds of music, and that's just from having a 15-year-old daughter and 18-year-old son. So I listen to everything from Pitch Perfect to whatever the new rap stuff is, that's out there with my son. But back in the day, it was heavier. It was AC/DC, it was Metallica. It was some heavy stuff, and I still enjoy that every once in a while. But again, I'm open to anything now.
Okay, well, I hope you're ready for a heavy dose of country, because this locker room, I've talked to a lot of the guys, it's a big country room. They
Okay, well, that's
love
okay. I like
they
Luke
love their
Bryan.
Zach Bryan. They love it all. So you're gonna get a heavy dose of that. And I like to ask the players. NHL teams are letting guys do this. They're letting guys pick custom goal songs. if you could have picked a custom goal frame, what sticks out?
I don't know. You wouldn't have heard it very often, that's for sure.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, you know what? You put me on the spot here. I don't know if I could pick just one song. Yeah, that would be a tough one. I'm gonna have to take a pass on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could feed you the old classics, some Enter Sandman, stuff like that, which,
Okay.
some Thunderstruck. You're gonna hear a lot of Thunderstruck at the Sleeman Center. That's our warm-up
Okay.
song. We love Thunderstruck. So we've heard some interesting answers there too. A lot of rap stuff. Kids love the rap
I
stuff.
bet.
The hype music. The hype music. I
Yeah,
also
yeah.
wonder too, you played with Jumbo, who was a pretty, he could be a superstitious guy. You played with a few other guys that were definitely quirky. Would you describe yourself as a guy that was really superstitious with your equipment, your routine, or did you just kind of go with the flow?
No, I was definitely an equipment guy. Like I liked my own equipment. I had I had shin pads from I don't know, maybe 9 years. I think I had my same shin pads. I had the old Cooper, again, aging myself, but the old Cooper shoulder pads. The only thing that really changed for me was my outer equipment. Everything was kind of patched together underneath over the course of my career, and it stayed like that. I still have that equipment. So every now and again, when I do go play in a beer league or recreationally, I still have my same playing equipment, which is very comfortable and it fits me like a glove.
There you go. Well, that's perfect. Well, I'm interested to see, how the Storm season goes, the impact that you're going to have on it. We're very pleased to have you as part of the Royal City, Rob. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks again for having me.
All right, everybody. Remember, you can find this podcast on the Storm website, Apple, Spotify. And remember, if you want to come down and see Associate Coach Rob Davison, the Guelph Storm in action this year, go to the Guelph Storm website or the Sleeman Center box office. We'll be back next week with more Eye of the Storm.